Hello, my name is Rain and welcome to my channel where I discuss fantasy Formula 1. I'm finally back home, which means I can finally discuss Silverstone, and what a race that was. Lewis Hamilton, the GOAT, 9-time winner at Silverstone, finally gets to win again after almost 3 years, the longest run by far he's gone in his career without a race win. And he finally gets to do it again in front of his home crowd. I mean, the storylines are endless, but I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about what that means for our fantasy teams, for my fantasy team. We're going to discuss everything Silverstone and then everything Hungary and some other things now that we are halfway through the season. It's going to be a long one, so strap in and get ready. Let's get right into it. So if you didn't watch my deadline stream on Saturday before the Silverstone qualifying, what are you doing? You should be there. That's where I finalized my team always. And my finalized team, my final transfers that I ended up doing was Red Bull Racing to McLaren, and then Yuki Tsunoda to Pierre Gasly. My number one tip that I was telling everyone, do this. I always do one, my Rain Fantasy's number one tip of the week. And my number one tip of the week at the deadline stream last Saturday was to buy Pierre Gasly. He had a 53-place grid penalty with an upgraded Alpine car. He was going to start from the back, not in the pit lane. It felt like a fantastic opportunity for Pierre Gasly to get a lot of overtakes, a lot of positions gained, and just get a solid 15-16 point haul, increase in price. Happy days. Instead, gearbox issue, and he pitted and DNF'd before the lap even starts for a fat -20. So obviously, that transfer of Yuki Tsunoda to Pierre Gasly was a massive mistake. But then again, you have to take those chances, right? Those chances with Pierre Gasly, with Esteban Ocon, previously when Ocon had that 5-place grid penalty. You really want to take those opportunities for the C-tier drivers because that's when they're going to perform. Unfortunately, something was wrong with Gasly's car and Alpine had a bit of a stinker. Somehow, though, I mean, partly because of Gasly and then George Russell's DNF, Ocon's 6-pointer, terrible race, terrible strategy, awful. Somehow he came out with with a price increase and positive points. Kevin Magnussen and Nico Hulkenberg continue to be amazing. The Haas's look great. Nico is the GOAT. Lando Norris and McLaren threw the win away again, which was really unfortunate for my team personally. I mean, if Lando Norris had won that race, he would have for sure gotten driver of the day again. Additional points, yada yada. McLaren, the constructor, also lost out in points because Piastri should have probably gone. It should have been a 1-2, right? So I felt like I did the correct transfers. I didn't really have any options. These were the transfers I was always going to make, and then they just ended up not being as good as they could have been. But that's the way sometimes with F1 fantasy. Things happen, and you just got to look at the decision for the decision and not for the outcome. Mercedes then keeps performing. Russell DNF, so I actually caught both the -20 this week, which was really bad normally. But considering how highly owned Mercedes and Gasly were at the top, we don't have exact data on that. There's no like effective ownership type deal in F1 Fantasy yet that I know of, it at least. If you know of a website that shows that, then please let me know. But overall, this has led to me getting a slight decrease in overall rank, down to 10,932. I was a bit higher before, but I was still on like 10.5, something like that. I can't exactly remember, 10.4 maybe, before Silverstone. So a slight arrow down, but considering I got both the DNFs this week, it's actually not that bad overall. So I'm pretty pleased with how my team performed. If you didn't see it, I had all my other C tiers increased in price, and I'm up now at a decent budget compared to a lot of people who are on the double premium team. I'm almost at 120 million, which I feel like is what a lot of people are at. Now, if you have Lewis Hamilton and you got +1 million, congrats to you. If you ran George Russell, commiserations. But that's just the way it goes sometimes. But that swing of 1.5 million between the two is very interesting. We're going to discuss that a bit later on. So that's about it from my team personally, and the just brief takeaways from Silverstone as a race. We're going to discuss a few of the asses a bit more closely and generally, and not just from my personal team perspective. So the first one to talk about is Lando Norris, and by extension also McLaren. Now, I had a plan sort of set in place, if you watched my video last week for my team selection video, that I was going to buy Ferrari instead of McLaren. I ended up buying McLaren because McLaren looked super fast at Silverstone. Now, the reason why I was going to buy Ferrari was because Ferrari would allow me to switch to a 2B lineup for Hungary. And I think Hungary is a very important race to have 2B in because it's a race with very few overtakes, so I don't really trust the C-tiers in Hungary. Now, with McLaren, they still look really strong. They should have won in Silverstone. They should have won in Imola. They should have won in Spain. They did win in Miami. And, it has to be said, McLaren are bottling it. They have the fastest car. And I don't really want to switch off Lando Norris. I don't really want to switch off McLaren. I think because Norris is not getting the wins, when he gets a win, which surely he wins again this season, right? The fact that McLaren only has one win this season is mental. When Norris wins again, surely he gets driver of the day again. So I don't really want to get rid of Norris. I could get rid of McLaren for Ferrari, and if you're sitting with a McLaren, you could do that if you're looking to free up budget. But McLaren just looks so fast right now. They just need to get the strategy right. The drivers are driving well. Maybe they aren't as experienced in wet conditions as Lewis Hamilton is, or as good in wet conditions as Max Verstappen is. But the team on the pit wall really are making mistakes. And yes, Lando made mistakes. He didn't hit the pit box correctly, but if they had put him on the mediums, if they had put him a lap earlier, the race would have been very, very different. And it's hard because they're making mistakes and it's costing us fantasy points and them real points. But I also don't want to get rid of them because they are clearly the fastest team, right? So surely it has to work out at some point. So the problem then becomes how do I keep this by switching to a 2B lineup later on, and we're going to discuss that in at the end of the video. But that's sort of where I'm at with Lando Norris and McLaren. I don't really want to sell them. I want to keep them, and I think if you're not running Lando Norris right now, you should be looking to run Lando Norris. Lando Norris still got second, even though he got third. Max Verstappen should have probably been second in the driver of the day vote. Now he got third overall. But if we go to F1 Fantasy Tools and click race results, fantastic website, you should be using it. Let's ignore the kick commercials, although that's actually a valid commercial to have here. Norris still performed decently, like 26 points, just 3 points behind Verstappen, 2 points behind Sainz. Sainz got the fastest lap on the final lap, so really you could say that he was the third highest scoring driver. Only Verstappen got more because he got second place, but even like a 3-pointer, that's nothing compared to the price of the two. So Lando Norris performed really, really well again. Obviously not to the level of Hamilton, but that's driver of the day, that's a win, and positions gained and a good qualifying. So yeah, Norris should be getting driver of the day. He should be winning. He should be the one on 47 points most of the time. So I really don't want to be selling Norris right now. And if you have Norris in your team, I wouldn't be selling it. If you don't have Norris in your team, I would be looking to buy Norris going into Hungary, right? So that's the thing with McLaren. Let's move on from them. Let's talk about Ferrari quickly. Ferrari looked bad. Ferrari's just clearly the third fastest team now. Yes, Sainz got a decent score, but that was mainly due to the fastest lap that he got by pitting at the end. The Ferrari Constructors still decent, right? 35 points is not great, but it's not awful either. They were the fourth highest scoring here, and they did get the fastest lap points in here. So without the fastest lap point, I mean, Ferrari were definitely in the mud. I mean, yes, Leclerc had an awful race overall, so you can't really look at that too much. But they've just been clearly worse recently. Obviously, the double DNF in Canada. In Spain, they were the clear fourth fastest. In Austria, yes, they scored high, but that was only because Red Bull and McLaren's DNF at the end, and Sainz getting on the podium. So they should have been the fourth highest scoring team again. They were clearly the fourth fastest in Silverstone. And all of this come after Monaco, where I made a tier list video saying that Ferrari was essential, and they really don't look essential anymore. The only real value, I don't see any value in having the drivers, either Leclerc or Carlos Sainz. Leclerc at 23 million, getting reduced in price, could be good, but we need to see Ferrari be second fastest or third fastest at the very least, like beating Mercedes, beating Red Bull, at least having a shot at getting a podium, because right now I don't see Leclerc or Sainz getting on the podium unless there are DNFs like there were in Spain. And for the price, I mean, yes, Sainz is 22.2 million, but if we go by value, Leclerc is still more expensive than Hamilton, and I would be running Hamilton every time. I would be running Oscar Piastri every time. Russell is cheaper than Carlos Sainz by quite some margin. Russell's 20.9 million after his DNF, whereas Sainz is 22.2. So I would just not be running the Ferrari drivers anymore. The only any merit to the Ferraris overall is the constructor. It's still below 25 million. It's getting some fastest pit stop. They got faster pit stops in Austria, which also helped their score massively. And apart from Red Bull, they're the only other team to get the fastest pit stop so far this season. So they're at least there for those points. And as a budget option, it could be worth it, right? But I think if you're running either McLaren or Red Bull Racing as one of your constructors, you have them with Mercedes. Mercedes is still cheaper. Mercedes are performing better. I think right now the constructor to have is Mercedes. You should have Mercedes, and then you should mix it up with either McLaren or Red Bull. Probably not Red Bull because Paris still sucks, and Ferrari. And I would probably rank them in McLaren first, Ferrari second, Red Bull third. Red Bull would be higher up if Checo could just finish P6, but it looks like he can't even do that. So Ferrari as a constructor is not awful, but again, McLaren is just so much faster than everyone else. If they get it right, that's a lot more points, and Mercedes is just better for the value. And speaking of Mercedes, like over the course of the last 4 races since their upgrade in Canada, they are the highest scoring constructor. I mean, they are. That's just a fact, even with Russell's DNF. So I think everyone should be running Mercedes right now. You get both the budget. Yes, didn't get budget now because Russell DNF, but you both get the upside of budget gain and points gain. So I think Mercedes actually now is the best constructor to have. And then you just pick either Ferrari for budget or McLaren for points or Red Bull Racing if you think that those extra 3.2 million is worth it, and that Checo is going to start putting the car where it should be. But yeah, that's the constructors then. Let's talk about some of the C tiers. I think the Alpines were very unlucky. Very unlucky. I think they should be performing well. Their car has gotten upgraded. I'm assuming Esteban Ocon is getting the upgrade soon as well. Pierre Gasly has changed all the engines in his car, and his car barely even started, so he should be ready to go. So I really still like the Alpines, but they're also up there in price. So how do you fit both of them in? And that's where we're getting to. I'm going to get to that later with the single B versus 2B lineup, is that you can't really fit all these good C-tier options in the 2B lineups. But both Alpines do still look great. Ocon's got an increase in price somehow, despite the awful race that he had. And then Gasly should be up there as well. Then you have Magnussen and Hülkenberg. I think Hülkenberg right now is the most essential C-tier driver. I think everyone needs to have Hülkenberg. Back-to-back P6s. More points in the last 2 races than Paris in his last 6. Yikes. And Magnussen also looked decent. I mean, qualifying further back, that's what we expect. Increasing in positions in the race, getting overtakes, it's what we expect. That's what Kevin Magnussen has done the entire year. I really like the Alpines and the Haas's. As for the V-Carbs, I know Yuki got points this race, but it's not enough in my opinion. He only really got those points because bad strategy from Ferrari, Russell DNF'd, and then Alpines messed up the strategy with Ocon, so Ocon couldn't challenge for it, which I think he would have. I think Gasly could have challenged for a point. Either Perez obviously should be getting points. It's not guaranteed that Aston Martin was ahead, but even both Aston Martin got points this time. So I don't think we trust VCarb anymore right now. At least it feels like they've gotten pretty handily passed by both Haas and Alpine, and then they're already slightly behind or equal to Aston Martin. So it's only really Kick and Williams behind them right now. Same goes for Williams. Yes, Logan Sargent got a P11, but would they have been that high up without those DNFs or bad strategy from Ferrari? Maybe not. They did have an upgrade and they did look reasonably fast, but I think it's still a wait and see for Alex Albon. And then the Kick Saubers, and I want to spend some more time talking about the Kick Saubers because I've talked a lot about Logan Sargent being bad and Logan Sargent just decreasing in price over and over again, and the difference between Logan Sargent and someone like a Zhou Guanyu in price. But those Kick Saubers are so bad, man. They are the clear 10th fastest team, and it's not even close at this point. And it's gotten to the point where I don't even think it's worth upgrading from Logan Sargent. I talked a lot about this last week and during my live streams and things like that, that the price difference of running different assets and running like a Ferrari over a McLaren or something like that is that, you know, you can upgrade a Logan Sargent to a Zhou Guanyu or a Valtteri Bottas, but what is the point? What's the point of upgrading Logan Sargent to Zhou Guanyu and Valtteri Bottas? They keep decreasing in price. I mean, Bottas looks close, but even he failed with only 4 points. Like, he got 3 overtakes, 1 positions gained. He started, I mean, if he had started further back, I guess, but starting in 16th, only gaining 1 position, even with the strategy being decent, they completely messed up the strategy from Zhou Guanyu, so he got -2 points, and he's just not increasing in price. He's just getting those low scores over and over and over again. I don't know what it did in Miami, but apparently it worked there. The Saubers just look awful, honestly, and I feel like if you are in the position where like one of your slots has to be a Logan Sargent, right? You're building a team, you're maximizing your budget, and you get a Logan Sargent in there. It's not even that bad. You just expect him to decrease in price. Just hope he doesn't crash. And what's the value in getting a Zhou Guanyu? Zhou Guanyu could just as likely DNF as Logan Sargent, I feel like, at this point. Valtteri Bottas, maybe not. But then again, are you really spending 2.5 extra million to upgrade Logan Sargent to Valtteri Bottas just for the non-DNF chance when you could be upgrading, I don't know, something like a Albon to a Pierre Gasly or a Kevin Magnussen, right? I feel like that jump is much more valuable. So I feel like it's better to just spend your money and just bite the bullet with Logan Sargent. Don't even bother with the Kick Saubers at all at this point. I don't know. The Kick Saubers are just bad, and I'm not really excited to put them in my team. If I end up making transfers to where, like, the last transfer, I have 7.7 million, I am probably getting Bottas over Logan Sargent. But I don't think it's worth downgrading something else to upgrade to Logan Sargent, right? I think McLaren plus Logan Sargent is way better than Ferrari plus Bottas, for example. That shift in money to remove Logan Sargent, which I've talked about before, is not worth it to get the kicks. It might be worth it to get something like a Nico, if you don't have Nico. It might be worth it to get something like a Gasly. So if you can free up even more money, then maybe then it's worth to do that transfer. Like if you transfer out McLaren to Ferrari and that gives you enough money to move from a Logan Sargent up to a Nico or up to a Gasly, then yes, I would say that's worth it. But to just upgrade to a Kick Sauber or to Alexander Albon, I don't think that's worth it at all, to be honest. Another thing we need to briefly mention is Lance Stroll. Lance Stroll is now at 15.1 million. If you don't know what that means, go watch my team value video. Links in the description, I guess. Lance Stroll is now a B-tier driver, which I think officially makes him the worst option in the game. And I don't think that's controversial. I don't think anyone should be running Lance Stroll. If you have Lance Stroll, you have to sell him. It's as simple as that. Why is he the worst? Well, he's not getting you budget anymore. He's not getting you points. He's crash prone. I can keep going on. His main value as a driver previously was budget, and because he qualified badly, he could gain positions in a faster car. But now both Haas and Alpine look to have caught up to Aston Martin. I know Aston Martin still got double points in Silverstone, but even Fernando Alonso has been struggling in recent races prior to Silverstone. So they're no longer that guaranteed 5th fastest team. and Lance Stroll still as crash prone as ever, and now he doesn't have the upside of bringing you 0.5 million every race. So thank you, Lance Stroll, for your service, but we won't be needing it anymore. Let's talk about chips, shall we? I've already used 3 of my chips, as you can see here, but I've talked a bit about chips in the last weekends, especially before Austria and it being a sprint race. And then in Silverstone, I got a bunch of questions as well. And I feel like I should make a little section in the video just talking about chips in general. The wild card, use it whenever you feel like your team is bad at this point. It's very personal. I can't really give you a guide for that. I'm still looking for a good time to use the final fix. The only real time we've talked about the final fix was for Russell. Back when I made a video about it. I ended up not using it then. It would have been correct because Leclerc ended up DNFing in Canada, but Russell also didn't perform well, so I was right in distrusting Russell. So the final fix, we're still waiting for a good opportunity to use it. The autopilot, now that so many people are running 2B lineups, I'm getting questions about the autopilot every weekend. I think you wait. I think the best time to use the autopilot is when you have 2 drivers that you think can win the race on your team. And most of the time, I know Russell just won, I know Hamilton just won, I know Leclerc won not too long ago, but I think we can agree that most of the time it's between Max Verstappen and Lando Norris. And I think we should be waiting until we have a team that can accommodate Lando Norris and Max Verstappen, aka later on in the season. I think the autopilot is going to be the best probably in the final race. Maybe not even the final race, but close to it. Or at least in one of the final races where DNFs are very common. Think Singapore, something like that, right? A race where you have 2 B tier or A tier drivers that you think both have the chance to win, and you're either worried about rain or DNFs or similar. I think that's when you use the autopilot, and I don't think Silverstone was the time to use it. If you had Hamilton and Russell on your team, congratulations, the autopilot was the best chip ever used, but you probably already had the DRS boost on Hamilton if you have those two. If you had those two, if you had like a Piastri and a Hamilton, then yes, you probably had the DRS boost on Piastri. So yes, the autopilot was good, but the autopilot is also the weakest chip, so you can really go ahead and use it any week. It could be vibe space too, but I'm personally going to save it as late as possible for when I have the best 2 drivers possible. Then the extra DRS is obviously in a sprint race weekend at some point later in the season. The no negative is another one. I've already used it. I think you should always look to use the no negative in a sprint race. Yes, if you used it this weekend and you had Gasly, you had Russell, congratulations, it was great for you, 40 points. But you also got unlucky and hit both the DNFs, right? In a sprint race, there are way more chances for DNFs. There are 2 starts. Starts is where most DNFs happen. And yeah, I think sprint races, there's just more opportunities to get points. There are more sections where you could lose points due to positions lost, race, things like that. So I think the no negative should always be used in a sprint race, almost always. And there are sprint races coming up, especially sprint races that are likely to rain. I mean, Brazil sees rain quite a bit at that time of the year. So the no negative looks great for something like Brazil. And then we have the limitless. Now, I made a video about limitless in Austria. I talked about limitless in Silverstone. And in both those, I ended up saying use limitless in Hungary. Now, I'm not going to discuss that in this video. I'm going to make an entirely separate video about limitless in Hungary. If you still have your limitless, you need to watch that video. That video will be dropping later this week, probably in the weekend. So look out for that. But all I'm saying is that Hungary looks like a pretty good race right now to limitless in. And we're going to discuss why I, trust the higher tier drivers in Hungary more than in other races in the next segment. So stick around and we're going to talk about Hungary as well as what my personal team plans are. And now let's talk some more about Hungary, right? Next race, Hungary. What are we expecting? Well, I've talked about this a lot of times before. Hungary is a race with very few overtakes. I was there last year. It was a stinker. Hungary is kind of like Monaco, but, not as extreme. So I'm personally not expecting the C tiers to do that well. Some C tiers will. Let's look at race results. In Monaco, not every C tier was bad, right? You had Tsunoda, you had Bottas. That was it. The rest actually decreased in price. If I remember correctly, we can sort for that actually here. Price changes in Monaco. Yes, so the only... and Albon. I forgot about Albon. Albon also increased in price. So it was Albon, Tsunoda, and then Bottas increased 1 million. But that was about it. And I am expecting similar, maybe not 3, but maybe only 4 or 5 of the C tiers. And even if 5, that would be half of them. So my guess is that 4 C tiers are going to increase in price. Which C tiers? God knows. But for that reason, it might be time, if you are like me, stuck on a single B strategy, it might be time to switch. Which switch do you do then? Well, I think the very obvious one, if you're sitting with me and have Lando Norris and don't want to sell Lando Norris, because I don't want to sell Lando Norris, I want to keep putting my DRS boost on Lando Norris because Lando Norris is going to keep getting driver of the day. It's George Russell, right? I think that is the most obvious pick. Mercedes look fast. Russell is super cheap, which allows you to have better C-tier assets. How would I go about this? Well, the first one to go would probably be Magnussen and Ocon. I have 3 free transfers, as you can see above me. So let's get George Russell in here. That gives me 4.7 million in the bank. That's not enough. I have to use my third transfer. I can't fit Logan Sargent in here. My option then is to either also remove Gasly. Let's just get Logan Sargent in here. And that will give me 9.4 million, which is only enough for an Alex Albon or a Valtteri Bottas, where it would probably be Alex Albon, if I'm honest. The other option there is to let's get Pierre Gasly back. And the other option would be to remove McLaren for Ferrari, to go for a budget building team but with George Russell in here, and that would give me enough money to get Logan Sargent in. So those are really my only options when it comes to getting a 2B lineup in, because I don't want to sell Norris. I could do something where I keep McLaren and I sell Norris, and you know, we have it could be a Oscar Piastri in here, and then I could keep Pierre Gasly. This doesn't have to be Piastri. It could literally be any B-tier driver. It could be Lewis Hamilton. It could be Charles Leclerc, but probably not Charles Leclerc. It would be Hamilton or Piastri. But then I would be more in the territory of wanting to use the autopilot chip every week. And with driver of the day, I just feel like Norris is getting more points. And what am I doing this for? To keep McLaren as a constructor. McLaren is not getting fastest pit stop points. They don't get the driver of the day points. So I feel like it's just better to have Lando Norris in here and then bite the bullet with Ferrari as the second one, if I want to keep Pierre Gasly and have 2 good B-tier drivers. Oh, C-tier drivers, rather, sorry. And these are the options if I'm going for a 2B lineup. And I think I might do it for Hungary. But I've just talked about how good I think the Haas's and the Alpines are. And I really do want to keep running Alpines and keep running Haas's. But the problem with that is I don't think that's going to perform well in Hungary. It might perform well later on in other races. But the good thing with this lineup specifically is that I'm still sort of building budget because I downgrade to Ferrari. I have 2 good C tiers here instead of just 1 good C tier. So I feel more comfortable that Hulk and Gasly can increase in price rather than Hulk and Albon or Hulk and Bottas. So and the 2.2 million in the bank allows me to get Ocon and Magnussen back should they rise in price in Hungary, even if Logan Sargent decreases in price. So that's sort of where I'm at with my team. It's not that crazy. It's really just one of 2. The final option, I guess, would be to keep the single B lineup in Hungary and just bite the bullet and hope the C tiers perform. But then I'm probably not making transfers. Then this is probably my team. I think I have the best single B lineup there is right now. I don't think you can get a better single B lineup. So I'm either not making transfers, and that feels like a waste with 3 transfers, especially since Hungary is one of those races where overtakes are rare. So I feel pretty set on making on switching to the 2B lineup and keeping Norris. And I also feel pretty set on it being McLaren making way. specifically because McLaren has just not been fast in pit stops. Yes, I think McLaren will outscore Ferrari. I'm hoping Ferrari can still perform decently well with both cars, getting like a 5th, 6th, because then at least they would increase 0.3 million and you know, not mess up Leclerc's strategy as a Leclerc fanboy. And then for my second drivers, it could be someone else other than Russell. If I get Logan Sargent in here, you can see that I can afford Lewis Hamilton, but that leaves me pretty broke on the cost cap. So that stops me from upgrading other drivers with something like a final fix. The only really final fix I could do is getting Leclerc in for Hamilton, although I probably don't want a final fix in Hungary. But yes, I could get Hamilton here, but I think Russell at 20.9 million is so worth it for the money, and having this money in the bank allows me to get other drivers back in if they should increase in price. It just feels safer having this, and I think really there's not really much between Russell and Hamilton. Yes, Hamilton completely destroyed Russell this race, but Russell got pole. Russell probably would have been P3, P2 had he not DNF'd from the race. Had he not had that gearbox issue. Gearbox, was it? No, it was cooling system. Had he not had the cooling system issue. So I think George Russell for 20.9 million is just such a bargain, and it allows me to be flexible with my other picks. And I'm also not in the mood to final fix George Russell in at any point, because his racecraft is a bit weaker. So say Lewis Hamilton were to finish in a position where I would want to final fix Lewis Hamilton in, at least I can final fix Lewis Hamilton on the DRS boosted spot. So that's also something to think about. But that's a minor thing. I'm sort of overthinking it at this point. But yes, I could get Lewis Hamilton here, but I think I prefer George Russell just because he's so much cheaper. Then again, if it turns out to be rain in Hungary, I haven't looked at the weather because it's 2 weeks away, so I don't really care at the moment, but I will talk about that when we get closer to Hungary. If it rains, then I might want to get Lewis Hamilton because he's just more experienced in the rain. But right now I'm leaning George Russell. Again, this could be a Charles Leclerc, but probably not. It's probably either Russell. It could also be Piastri, obviously. I can fit really any B-tier driver with this lineup. And yes, Piastri, but do I trust Piastri in the race? He hasn't really performed. If McLaren looks super fast, selling McLaren the constructor and then bringing Piastri in, that's sort of like getting McLaren's points anyway. So it all depends which B-tier driver I go for in the second spot, depending on, you know, what the pace looks like in FP1, 2, and 3 in Hungary. I think it's important to try and go for the fastest car in Hungary. Who you think will get pole? Again, because it's a difficult track to overtake. So maybe it is a Piastri if McLaren look the fastest. Again, I don't know. We'll see when we get to FP1, 2, and 3. But yeah, that's about it for this video. If you finished it, please leave a like. Please subscribe. Thank you so much for 1,000 subscribers. Thank you so much for watching, for supporting. Thank you so much to all of you that are in the deadline streams. They're so much fun, and I can't wait to keep doing them for the rest of the season. So don't subscribe. So subscribe so you don't miss it. Please don't subscribe. I guess that's it for now. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video or stream. Goodbye.